What I want to talk to you guys about today is it's I'm trying to get my mind around it. Basically, it's primarily about how we are only interested in in ourselves. So, in other words, even though sometimes we act like what we're doing is to benefit others, that we're getting some benefit out of it or we wouldn't do it at all. And so we lie to ourselves and to other people to basically try to give the impression that what we're doing is self-sacrifice and to benefit somebody else, maybe at our own expense, and to show that we're good people, and that's the benefit that we get out of it. And my reason for bringing this up today is because I think that this is a big ill in society. And there's two aspects to this. The first aspect is that we're lying to ourselves and everybody else by making it seem like we aren't really, we really are selfless, and we're not. We're actually very selfish. And in fact, if we acted selfish, in other words, if we actually showed what we really want, if we went after what each of us really wanted in life and were honest about that with ourselves first and then with those around us, it would be a great benefit to everybody, because there wouldn't be all this deception going on that makes people suspicious of each other. And I think this is a big thing that happens in the political arena. And it's all based in insecurity. That because each of us is very insecure, we tend to act in ways that are inauthentic and try to show that we are something that we really aren't. And, it's like we're trying to trick other people into believing something that's bullshit, essentially. So that's the first aspect of it. The second aspect, which I think is maybe hits more to the root of the problem, is that we don't really, a lot of us really don't know what we want. And I think it's because as we're raised from childhood on up, we're taught to try to be virtuous. We're taught to act in ways that are, quote, respectful or good or nice. And in doing that, we aren't actually able to act how we really feel. We aren't actually able to go after what we really want because we suppress it within ourselves because of the programming that we have that tells us not to do those things. You don't really need that. Oh, you don't really want that, do you? Go after this because it'll be better for you. You'll have a better life if you go after this particular occupation. This is better from a religious standpoint, or God will love you if you act this way or that way. Or you really need to do this because that's what your family needs you to do. So we end up falling into this trap of doing things because other people think it's good for us, or they at least tell us that it's good for us, whether they believe it or not. And we end up doing what other people, what we think other people think is right for our lives, instead of really getting in tune with what we individually want and going after that ourselves. So then we're masking what our true desires are, and we never are able to truly fulfill them, which is really sad way to live life, because you don't experience the fullness of what makes you happy. So what I would like to see is for people to really break free of that trying to please other people, trying to do things that they think other people will be happy about, and just go after what they really want. Actually, there's a third aspect to this that I forgot to key on, and that is something called virtue signaling. And that's basically what ends up happening, is that people try to signal to others that they're being so good, so righteous, the good guy, the sweet lady, by doing things that deep down, if they really, really were going after what they really wanted, they probably wouldn't do. If they really were in tune with who they really were and what they really wanted, they may not even do those things. They may not want to do those things. But because of their programming, because of what they learned in life, that's how they act toward others. And others think of them as nice people. Some people may think of them as people pleasers or ass kissers, because they're not really doing what they want to do. Of course, then you have people who will admit that they don't want to do certain things, and they will fight against things instead of taking action to break away from whatever it is that is causing them to feel like they should be doing things. So you'll end up having people who rebel against authority and rebel against certain things because they don't like it. Now, they could get out of the situation where there is a certain authority that is treating that person a certain way, in which case there would be no fight at all, because they would just relieve themselves of that responsibility, of that authority figure getting on their case by just leaving the situation. For example, a person who doesn't like the way his boss treats him could simply leave and go work somewhere else. A person who doesn't like the way things are run in his or her country could simply leave and go live in some other country where he or she thinks life is actually perfect based on that person's idea or ideals, having supposedly read or heard about things in other countries that were so much better than the country that they're living in now. But it's a matter of figuring out what that person wants and going after it. Instead of bitching and moaning, instead of people pleasing, actually taking action and taking responsibility for his or her own emotions, feelings about the situation. So, what is the solution to all this? The solution really is for each of us to look at where in our lives we are listening to what's going on around us and letting that influence what we do or where we go or even what we want, and begin to let go of those things. Let go of those influences. Start to drop those influences, or ask yourself, at least, just ask yourself, is this really what I want? Is this who I am? Is being altruistic, charitable, is that really me? If I didn't feel like somebody was looking down on me and saying, you need to help your fellow man, would I really do this? What if nobody was telling me what to do? What if nobody was guiding me in a particular quote unquote moral or ethical manner? What would I do? How would I act without that external direction? And really look at that. And then maybe even try doing it. Try doing something that maybe is opposite, or at least a little different from how you were programmed, and see what happens. See if it doesn't feel different. See if it doesn't feel right for you. Because the real important thing, I think, for each of us is to be authentic. You know, having grown up in a Christian home, one of the things that I learned was about charity, about giving, about being kind to others. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you have to ask yourself, am I doing this because I want a virtue signal to somebody else that I'm good? Or am I doing it because it's really something coming from in me that I feel the desire to help this other person? And it's not something where I feel like I'm overly sacrificing or I'm hurting myself in order to help that person. Because if you feel like you're hurting yourself in order to help somebody else, there's got to be some other payoff, or you wouldn't be doing it. One time I was at a live, or I was at a pub, and I was listening to a live band. And, you know, for me, if I like the band, I'll go and just tip the band, but the band may or may not notice me doing the tip because I may give the tip when they're on their break. But a friend of mine said, hey, dude, you need to give the tip when they're watching. That way they, you know, they see it and they feel good that you've tipped them, and then they know that you tipped and all that. And, you know, I wondered about that, and I thought, you know, maybe they'll think it's nice having seen me done the tip, but they'll know that based later on when they start going through their tip jar or tip box or whatever, they'll see how many tips they have, and they'll have an idea of how people feel about them, if that's what they base their feeling, their self-worth on. But why is it that I need to show that I'm giving the tip? That's virtue signaling. That's me trying to get other people's attention, saying, hey, I'm really good here. I'm giving you guys a tip. Look at me. And I think that's just being a big phony. Because if it's something that really gives you pleasure, and it's not because you're doing it just because other people will think you're so great, then that's a good reason to give it, because it comes from your internal desire to be altruistic, to be charitable. But as soon as you're doing it so that somebody else can look upon you and say, oh, that's cool that that person tipped, or hey, I'm going to tip too because they did, or whatever, you're actually virtue signaling. You're actually trying to get the kudos of others, make other people think you're so great. I mean, that's what philanthropists do, right? These people with billions of dollars give away what's actually not much, millions. It seems like a lot to everybody else who only has thousands or hundreds. But, you know, if you're giving away 1% of your money, it looks like a lot, and that's virtue signaling, and that's philanthropy for you. But in doing that, those people who are philanthropists with lots of money are actually using that to their advantage. They're leveraging their financial well-being by influencing others and getting things out of it. So don't think that those people are doing it because they're so kind and loving and self-sacrificing, because they aren't. I mean, tax benefits are one thing that they get out of it, but beyond that, they end up influencing organizations, politicians, and end up getting much greater benefits than the several $1,000,000 that they're donating to these different organizations. So let's stop lying to ourselves about what we really want. Let's stop lying to ourselves about who we really are and get in touch with that part of us, get in touch with who we really are and what we really want, and be open about it. And when you're open with what you want and who you really are, other people appreciate that. Even if it isn't the nicest thing, the fact that you're being freaking honest, other people will like that. They'll respect it, because then they'll know, you know what? I may not like what this person wants, but at least I know they're not bullshitting me. At least I know they're not trying to deceive me and scam me. Anyway, on the road to being authentic. That's my little rant for the day.